strength training really is so impactful, especially for women, is about that partnership with yourself and is about building yourself up and getting stronger.
Well, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. I've been wanting to have a trainer on the podcast forever, and I'm so glad that you're the first one because I couldn't have asked for a better guest. I just feel like the vibes were perfect. So I am so excited to jump into this because, I think health and entrepreneurialism, I'm always making that connection. So why don't we just dive right in? I would love for you to start with how you started Melrose Training. What was that journey like for you?
Absolutely. So I founded Melrose Training in 2020. So rewinding back to everything that was going on in that year. And, even if I look a few years prior to that, I really didn't see the world of entrepreneurship coming my way. I was a full-time registered nurse for 5 years. I never once thought about starting my own business, but when I graduated university and was, living in the city of Toronto on my own, I started to take notice of all of the cool workout studios. Toronto has such a cool, workout class culture, and this was 2016. I was a nurse, so I had all these weird hours, and I just started to dabble in fitness classes to really kind of see what they were about. And then I realized, to my surprise at that time, that working out could actually be fun. So that was really the ethos of, down the road, years and years later, becoming certified as a trainer myself and eventually founding Melrose Training and leaving my full-time role as a registered nurse. It's so interesting. I think so many things in life, when you look back, make perfect sense. But along the way, I really didn't see it coming and didn't know exactly what was next, especially in the very early days. But I really wanted to create a space for women to have fun with strength training in a way that was sustainable, and in a way that focused on health and longevity at the forefront as opposed to aesthetics. And so many of the other things that especially fitness for women is so often geared towards. So that was the really ethos behind Melrose Training when I really found a good place in my own fitness journey, and I found strength training and how powerful that was, how results driven that was, not just in your workouts but in your day-to-day life. I knew that I had to get certified to share that with other women, and from there Melrose Training was born. So now a lot of what I do in terms of being client facing is one-on-one personal training, both in Toronto and virtually. I do have also some on-demand group programs that's evolved over the last few years as the world has evolved as well. But that's a bit of the behind the scenes and the background.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to talk about. First of all, I think I want to dive into a little bit about strength training, because I think it's starting to get more and more popular. I think after the pandemic, women particularly started to find strength training and the benefits behind it. But obviously, the most common thing you hear is oh, I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to do strength training because of that. But I'm sure you know this, research shows how important muscle mass is as we age. It's my biggest thing. I see my grandmother and my nanny also, on my dad's side, they both lack such muscle. And even my great aunt, who's my pseudo grandma as well, I'm always telling her she's got to bulk up and stuff like that. And I think strength training is so underrated for women, and I would love for you to talk about sort of the science behind it, your personal journey with it, because I think we need to break that stigma.
Totally. And it's come a long way, but there's still room to go, because I do hear that quite often when I'm on social or meeting a client for the first time. This idea of, I don't want to accidentally turn into a bodybuilder, can seem really intimidating. And also, I know even from when I was starting my fitness journey, I used to just default to the treadmill because I had no idea what to do with weights. I had no idea how the machines worked. It seems really complicated. It seems really scary. People are worried, about injuring themselves, which I totally get. You want to make sure that you're doing something properly, especially when there's weight involved. But all of these things sort of put this cloud around it that can be so intimidating. But the reality is that not only is strength training really truly one of the most simple styles of movement, when you know what's what, it doesn't take long to get there. You really see that actually the core foundation of strength training is maybe 6 exercises with
Yeah.
certain variations of, our lunges and our squats. So, I always reassure the women that I work with, if they are coming from a place where it seems really intimidating and complicated, that it's actually so simple. And when you get the groove of it, not to say the workouts are easy, but it allows you to just be really present in the moment and in how you're moving in your body, because you're not trying to do a million things at once. It's really methodical. So that's
Yeah.
one side of it. On the other side as well, I mean, that notion of, am I going to accidentally bulk up, or, people see all sorts of images, or even this whole sort of idea on TikTok of, strength training bulks and Pilates tones. I think it's all so confusing. And
Mm.
people don't know necessarily where to turn to reach their goals, or they'll dabble in one thing, but not long enough to really see that progress that they're hoping to make. So it's can be very confusing, but it's well documented in research. As you said, the importance of having muscle for health and longevity, which is most optimally built and maintained through strength training, especially for women. Um, the benefits are really, really important and really unique to strength training. But
Mm.
also, I wish it was easier to build muscle. It is actually quite challenging.
So hard.
Unless people, it's so hard. I wish it was easier. Unless people are genetically predisposed to build or maintain muscle a little bit more easily, or they're dedicating their entire lives to their training the way Olympians do or bodybuilders do. The average woman who's lifting weights 2-3 times a week, going about day-to-day life, it's just simply doesn't work that way. And I think when people realize that that's not the case, and it's actually really about function and strength and longevity, that fear sort of moves out of the way, and you can actually just really enjoy and embrace the
Yeah.
process of strength training. But certainly, in the beginning, there's something called the beginner's effect, where when everything is new and you're starting lifting weights for the first time, that is the most muscle you're really ever going to build in a short period of time. And I think people, are always surprised and relieved if they have heard of this notion of, getting bulky from strength training, that it's really not that much. And all that said, it's such a great style of movement that feels really positive and empowering. You always feel like you're building yourself up, as opposed to so many other types of workouts and workout approaches that feel like you're breaking yourself down, or like you're punishing yourself or burning yourself out. Strength training is so much more uplifting, and you're working towards that goal of getting stronger, or hitting that first push-up, or hitting that new squat PR. And it just feels positive. And it really, that piece of enjoying what you're doing in your workout is so important for the idea of staying consistent. All workout styles are fantastic, and I always say to my clients, my online community, do what you love to do. Even if you're not sure what you love, do what you like, explore.
Yeah.
But strength training really is so impactful, especially for women, because the entire narrative around it is different, and it is about that partnership with yourself, and it is about building yourself up and getting stronger.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say to those who are listening that it is so hard to be a bodybuilder. Like, you are not going to look like that if you are lifting weights 2 to 3 times a week, simply. Like, watch Physical 100. Those girls who have that bodybuilding physique work insanely hard, like training 6, 7 days a week, eating ridiculously strict diets in order to make sure that that works. Like, to my queens out there who are thinking about doing strength training and are like nervous about it, like, don't worry. It's not going to happen for you unless you actively try.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other piece too, when women are thinking about what are those aesthetic results going to look like, strength training
Mm,
is the most efficient style of workout to boost your metabolism. You're burning
yeah.
calories during the workout as you would with any type of movement, but also strength training has the unique benefit of boosting your metabolism, aka burning calories for 24 to 48 hours afterwards. Also,
Yeah.
having muscle, even a small amount of muscle, requires a lot of energy. So the more you lift, the more you build, the stronger you get, the faster your metabolism is at baseline. So when people think about bulking up, really it's quite the opposite. Even with building muscle, a lot of women actually find, even without necessarily changing other factors in their life, that faster metabolism actually, really leads to your clothes fitting a bit different and seeing those changes in your body, as opposed to getting bigger.
That stat, when I heard it for the first time, blew my mind because I had done so many other types of workouts before. Like, I had done Orange Theory, I had done CrossFit, like all of that. And to hear that something like strength training, which when you really get into it, the workout is hard, but it's nothing like a CrossFit berries hit situation. It's so much more, I don't know, it's not comfortable because it's obviously uncomfortable, but it's just so much better. Like, if you hate those types of workouts, strength training is for you because that experience feels so much better. And then to also hear that you working 3 to 4 days a week, like, a normal amount of time, I think, for an average person, like to hear that the hard effort that you're putting in those 3 to 4 times a week then has lasting benefits for the rest of the week, like the 7 days across that. It's like mind boggling and it totally shifts your perspective. And I think strength training for me was the first time I ever felt excited to go to the gym for the reasons that you stated. It was that mental aspect that really had me hooked.
Totally. It's so funny. I compare it almost in a way to putting your money in a high interest savings account where it's working for
Mm,
you. It's kind of that idea of
yeah.
putting your time, investing your energy into your strength training workout because you are reaping the rewards even outside of that training session. Oftentimes there is some sort of aesthetic goal with the clients that I'm working with, or questions that I get from my online community, which is absolutely valid. And it can seem like the default would be to run a million miles on the cardio, like on the treadmill, do a ton of cardio, burn yourself out, burpees, drill yourself to the ground. And ultimately, twofold, that's not the most efficient style of training. Super high risk for injury when the workout is more like just go, go, go by any means necessary. Like, 100 burpees at the end, you're sprinting on an incline, form is sloppy, risk for injury. And also, I think there's a pipeline with a lot of women who train, strength train in their later 20s, early 30s. I know for me personally, I had that hit phase. And it was fun at the time, but I was so depleted, so exhausted, always sore, never felt like I was getting stronger. And also, too, when you push yourself to that like 150% in every single workout, it is so hard to psych yourself up for the next one. It really makes
Yeah.
people sort of on this roller coaster of working at a ton, maybe following a wave of motivation, and it's not sustainable. It's too much. You're always
Yeah.
sore. Knock on wood, people get injured, and then dropping off altogether and just feeling really badly about it. Whereas strength training,
Yeah.
you feel so good afterwards. You feel strong and energized. You're not just like collapsed on the mat with no energy to go through the rest of your day. It's really uplifting on that mental side, but also just in the way that you feel in your
Yeah.
body, which is huge. And it makes you want to work out again. And it makes you, on those days when your alarm goes off early and you're like not really feeling it, you're going to feel better after. Same thing the end of a long day, right? You're going to feel better
Yeah.
after. Whereas, that's not always the case with different styles of training out there that just feel a lot more intense and, just burn you out.
100%. I literally started to look forward to going to the gym, especially because I work at a desk all day and I'm like stuck in my chair. Like, the idea of moving my body is epic at the end of the day. It feels so good. And I would love to know what your journey was like personally with strength training. Like, how did you get into it? When did you start to notice the mental aspect? Because I feel like I have like, I want to compare our stories to, because I'm so curious to know if like the timing is similar.
So for me, going back to the very beginning, it was Soul Cycle. That was kind of my gateway into the world of workouts. So fun and party on a bike. And that was really the
Literally.
type of movement that felt like, okay, I can move my legs in a dark room. I can do that. I can, figure it out when I was like very, very new to all of it. And it was so fun and it made me want to go back. From there, I had a class pass era where
Mm,
I just tried everything in the city because I built confidence in myself at SoulCycle and got curious about what other styles of movement there was and started to branch out and dabble in a bit of everything. Went a little too hard on that, a little bit of overtraining, as you sometimes do when you get really excited about something new. But, one thing that I know looking back on now is I didn't realize I was overtraining because exercise is such a good thing. I thought more of it was better.
mm,
But there is a point where not only is it counterproductive to, not give your body enough rest and just do more and more and more on your workouts, you can actually, burn yourself out, end up injured. Fortunately, I didn't, but it did lead me to a place where I started to think, okay, I've been working out for, a few years now. I don't know if things feel like they're getting easier. Like I couldn't see clear progress. I remember thinking it was interesting that I had been working out for years, but I couldn't do a full push-up. Now I know, I wasn't necessarily training push-ups and there wasn't, that progressive overload or that strategic plan, but it got me curious to think about how could I be doing things better because I knew I was putting in the time and energy into my workouts, but not necessarily getting stronger because I was just like jumping here, there, and everywhere. So
yeah.
from there, I started to get more curious about strength training. There was an amazing local gym in Toronto for women that had a lot of strength training classes. So shout out to
Cool.
L Fitness in Toronto. They really created such a safe space to go and lift weights in a way that felt more accessible and more like the vibe I was looking for, not some like bro, like bodybuilding gym. The real
Yeah.
weights and, simple, efficient strength training exercises, but it just made it feel like it was more of a fit for me. And
Yeah.
from there, you kind of quickly pick up the gist of strength training. And I was like, wait, no one told me this was so simple. Like, what have I been doing all these
Yeah.
years? Like, burning myself out, doing all these workouts that, many of which I love, but honestly, a lot of them I didn't really love, but I thought it was what I had to be doing. And from there, it was like, that was such a game changer. The other thing too, incorporating progressive overload and what that means for anyone who doesn't know is it's essentially just strategic progression over time. So as you get stronger, the workouts get a little harder. It's really hard to infuse that into your routine when you're doing a million different things and there's no continuity from workout to workout. So that was why I was working out for years without ever really feeling like I was getting stronger because it was a bit of like all over the place.
Yeah.
Whereas simplifying my routine to more of that strength focus, I started feeling benefits, seeing benefits, getting stronger, building new muscle definition, and just feeling really excited about my workouts, really feeling that positive, uplifting approach. So from there, when I was like, wait, no one told me it was this simple and like this good, that's when I was inspired to become a trainer on the side, which was really the intention that I had going into it. And shortly after, 2020 unfolded and I stepped away from my career as a registered nurse and decided to really jump in full time with building Melrose Training from the ground up.
I mean, I think like one of my favorite things that you said was something that I think really highlights why strength training is amazing is because you start to set goals for yourself. Like SoulCycle was also my gateway drug to exercise. Like I loved the inspirational aspect of it. Like when you had a teacher that made you cry during class, like that was the addictive aspect for me. And but simultaneously, like you're just it's just cardio, and my body does not do well with cardio. I have tried for years to
Mm.
understand why, but I think it's because I have rosacea, and that does not allow me to like process heat effectively. So with cardio I overheat and then I get super dehydrated, and like if you know me, you know I drink a shit ton of water, so like water is not the problem. There was some other aspect where cardio just did not work for me, so I that sort of was the reason I had to change. But when you do these types of classes, it's hard to set tangible goals. Like, even if you're doing, let's say, like an Equinox strength training class, They go so quickly because it's really only 45 minutes and it's 45 minutes of nonstop work. So I think the biggest struggle, like you said, is making sure that people don't hurt themselves because form is king. And if you don't have your form down, like you will hurt yourself. And the teachers don't have the space or the availability or the time to be able to really focus in on that. So, okay, like let's say that that's what you're doing. You're probably starting with 15-pound weights or, what is it, like 7.5 kgs or something like that. And so maybe next, 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, I'm going to go up in weight, but like, because also the way that the class is structured, it makes it very difficult to actually understand exactly goal and progress, like you said. Whereas with strength training, like you have arm day and you have a list of all the things that you do and you can see exactly what you did the week before. So then you can really start to make like clear active changes. And you can also say like, okay, here's my month. You can then start to set goals for PRs and things like that. And that is, I think, when magic happens. Like, it's a cliche for a reason, but if you want to set goals, they have to be clear and they have to be measurable. And exercise is not exclusive from that. Like, in order to progress exercise, you have to set goals. And the other thing that I loved that you said was, it was like, yes, you were working out 5 days or how many days a week you were working out, but like you couldn't do a push up. And I think functional training for me is massive. Like, doing Soul Cycle every day is not going to necessarily set you up for success at the age of 85. Like, you want to be able to just
Oh
do
my
like
gosh.
regular person things, you know?
And let me tell you, I'm 31, and that is every day more and more at the forefront of my training. I think, in
Yeah.
the beginning, I wanted to get abs and I was really focused on looking a certain way, which, those things are valid too.
Everyone starts
But
that way.
whatever it takes to get started, right? But when it
Like,
moves into a place of this is time for me, this is time for my health, this is so that I don't have back pain from sitting all day. This is so that I train with clients who want to keep up with their grandkids. This is so that, when I'm like traveling and doing all this hiking in Italy this summer, I feel strong and I'm like, I can keep up. When it's those
yeah.
bigger picture goals, it's so rewarding. It makes you want to stick with it. It gives you that motivation to push through when it's hard. Because just kind of getting abs, again, valid, but there's not enough substance to it to carry you through that lifelong training journey. When you're thinking of that health and longevity piece and something bigger and more meaningful, the ironic thing is, not only is that the best way to train, but that's actually when you see the most physical progress because you've built a routine that you can
Mhm.
actually stick with, you actually want to stick with. You're training in a way that's simple, sustainable, efficient. So it kind of flips everything on its head. And anytime I'm training with clients who maybe do have those more aesthetic goals at the forefront, um, the approach and the narrative and the coaching style that I take is actually focused on some of those other things, which is a roundabout way of actually achieving those goals anyways. So I love that. And we're totally aligned in terms of, that idea of thinking about 80-year-old you, and doing what you can to take care of yourself now to, be as strong and healthy and confident in your body, not just today, but down the road.
This is why I think that exercise is so effing important. Like, for me, I mean, honestly, you said it really nicely. I would have said it much more like not diplomatically and been like, if you have aesthetic goals around exercise, that's fine. That's how I got started. It's how my mindset was around it, but it's shallow. It doesn't have much substance. If you hit that goal of, looking the way that you want to look, you feel great, but at the same, it's not sustainable. Like, you will end up falling back because inevitably you'll be like, oh, I hit my goal, and it's not a sustainable life goal. It's shallow. And what you had said about how when you realize creating sustainable goals up levels your ability to, look the way that it like unlocks all this other shit. And it unlocks for me that discipline and resilience that then creates like a metaphor for life where exercise teaches you these foundational mindset habits that up level your life in every other way. So for me, it's like like if you exercise and you figure that out and you figure out how to make it a sustainable part of your lifestyle, that is like a key for me that unlocks so much other awesome shit that happens in your life. Like I think about, I mean, you said it, like the resilience around when shit gets hard, how to power through, the discipline of showing up every single week. Like that's honestly like I think the first step is how do you go from like discipline to lifestyle. And I imagine that you have probably had moments in life where you related a situation back to being like, oh, well, if I can show up every day for my workouts, I can do X. Or if I can hit this PR, I can do X in life. Like, because it happens to me all the time.
Oh my gosh, that is the absolutely like that is the best part that I don't really think a lot of people talk about. And I have been so lucky to see this with so many of my wonderful clients that I train with so closely. When you build that trust and that confidence in yourself through exercise, and you know, maybe step outside of your comfort zone to get started, and you push yourself through new things, and you're actually talking yourself through, you know, some of those really hard moments. Like strength training is hard. It really does translate
Yeah.
into something bigger. Um, Not only that sort of thought process and that mindset shift, but even just to move through your day with endorphins, like with that pep in your step, like life just feels that much better. You get so much mental clarity as well. Like working out,
Yeah.
you can come into it with like the worst mood ever, and you will
Hmm.
always feel so much better after. You can be having the best day ever, and it's going to get better if you work out. Like it is such a
Yeah.
life hack in that sense of something to lean into. And I always tell my clients too, like, we're striving for consistency, not perfection. So some days are not going to feel like your best work. Like some days you might come into the gym and you're like, I'm running on fumes. Like I have 10% to give right now.
Yeah.
And if you can give whatever you have, that's all we can ask for. That's going to look different on different days, but you're always going to get so much back. And I really do find too, that's often those workouts where you're like, I don't have time for this. I don't have the energy for this. Like I don't want to be doing this right now. Those are the best ones because you're like, I needed that so badly. This has been, you know, maybe the really hard week, or like something happened
Yeah.
today and I just have clarity about it. I feel better. You know, the world's not burning down. Like it just sets such a different tone to move through your rest of your life, which is so priceless and beyond anything we could, you know, ever achieve, even just physically. That is really what it's about.
Especially as women, working out for us looks so different than men. And I feel like it's so important to realize that, like, our physical makeup, the way that our hormones fluctuate throughout the month, means that working out, like, looks different every day. I mean, as a woman, if you're listening, it's like every fucking day is different. I don't know what it's like to be a man and to wake up and feel the same every day. Like, that's
Like
literally
one vote. Yeah.
incomprehensible. I don't know what that's like. And so I think the coolest thing about exercising as a woman is A, you learn your body so much better, but B, like you learn how to roll with the the tides. Like, you know, you start to feel when you have peak moments and then you can like drive hard, you know, and then you realize like during like your menstrual cycle you will probably not be able to lift as heavy as you were before, and like that's okay. And then there's like a moment when you have to give yourself grace and you have to like really take care of yourself and like be okay with that and not be hard on yourself about it. And like those are such, I feel like, important life lessons in general for us. I think women are so hard on ourselves, and to have those moments of vulnerability and to say like, girly, you know, like some, I mean, when I strength train and I'm on my period, like I will probably lift like 5 to 10 pounds less than what I normally do. It like I physically cannot lift it. And I have to just like give myself a hug and be like, you still showed up today. And that's like a win. And we're just going to focus on form instead. We're going to go super light, like take it back to basics. And that experience is so nice because, like, when we have emotional changes throughout the month, like, there are times when I feel like I want to cry for no reason, and I just have to like go home and be like, it's okay. Like, tomorrow will be better. And I think without exercise, like, that ability to persevere and push through would not be as strong as it is.
Absolutely. It's a super powerful outlet. And there's that mindfulness component as well. I mean, to carve out 30 minutes, an hour, however long your workout is in your busy day, that's time for you, no screens. For the most part, like off your phone, just focus
Yeah.
on the task at hand, focused on being present in your body, doing something methodically is really, really powerful. And that might be the only hour in the day that someone has really, truly just for them. That might be the only time during the week where someone's thinking, okay, how do I actually feel today? Or like, what do I need? What kind of stretch do I want to do? What do I want to focus on? It's really
Mhm.
powerful. You learn that body awareness that carries through into the rest of your life. I don't think, I was much younger back then, but I don't really think I ever stopped to notice how I really was feeling. Whereas your workouts are a really beautiful opportunity to do
Yeah.
that. And you just become so much more in tune with all of those elements. And that's really powerful. I think it's that opportunity to be present with yourself. Also, strength training lends itself nicely to that because it is more of a methodical type of workout, as opposed to just like, repping out a million burpees again. When you're moving more methodically, you can really go sort of inwards. Or, it can kind of be whatever you need it to be. If you also need it to just be like, I need to get out of my own head, I'm just going to get into the music, I'm just going to lift the weights, it can be that too, but it's really just dedicated time for you that's so powerful and has this ripple effect.
100%. I kind of want to pivot a little bit because I could literally talk about this for the entire hour, it's so amazing. But I also I'm so curious to know, like, what was the process like of actually getting the business started? Like, did you have to find a studio space? What did you have to get a special LLC? Like, how did you get clients? Like, all of the sort of logistical stuff around actually starting the practice. Were there any sort of specific things that you had to do that you didn't know about? I just want to know all the things.
Fully. I had no idea what I was doing, truly. And I think it's a testament to the idea that you can learn, everything is figure outable. You can learn anything, not from a place of ego, but from a place of like, you can figure out whatever you need to figure out. I really, truly believe that.
Mhm.
So for reference, when I was
Yeah.
first starting about thinking, to become certified, I was researching a bunch of certifications. One thing that I think is interesting when I think back on this in 2019, I actually put it off for a few months because I was in a different place back then, and I actually thought that I didn't look fit enough. I didn't sort of fit the trainer narrative. I wasn't always active, like I wasn't an athlete in high school. So I kind of put it off because I didn't think people would take me seriously, which I think is so interesting now because the approach that I take with my clients
Yeah.
as Melrose Training, grew into what it is now, is really that sustainable piece and that idea of, strength training for the modern everyday woman. And I think that's actually a superpower, in terms of maybe feeling a little bit more approachable or a little bit more realistic in terms of strength training
Yeah.
goals as opposed to someone who's super jacked or like was always active. So for anyone, I think
Yeah.
this really applies to any field, but especially fitness. There's room for everyone, and even if you feel like you don't necessarily fit that narrative, that will resonate with people, and that really does become your superpower. So eventually I did get certified. There's so many options of certifications out there. I started with my one-on-one personal training certification and later added in the group fitness side.
Mhm.
But my intention originally with starting was I was still a full-time registered nurse. I was going to be working part-time at a gym in Toronto, doing occasional training, very much casual. So that's what I started with.
Mm.
From there, once I really got into it, all of this being said, I absolutely loved my time as a registered nurse, but I was super burnt out. I was 5 years into my career and, really, really struggling with that burnout day to day. And this opportunity to train with women in such a uplifting environment that was fun. We had music playing, and again, everyone always feels better after a workout. And it just really had such a
Yeah.
contrast from sort of what I was doing otherwise full time, and I felt such a pull to do more training and take on more clients and more hours. But I had this other career that I really did love so much and had went to school for. And, that was my life plan. And I felt a lot of, um, internal conflict with that for the few months that
Yeah.
those two worlds overlapped. In 2020, of course, when COVID hit, I think that was such a catalyst for so many people to really think about, am I doing what I want to be doing? What kind of life, do I want to be living? I
Yeah.
feel like so many of the rules got thrown out the window. And I knew that I really wasn't working for me to continue being a registered nurse. I was so burnt out for so long. I had to have a real honest conversation with myself about stepping away, which I thought at the time would be temporary. But when I made that decision, it allowed me more time to get back into personal training. I really had no intention when I resigned from my nursing role to build Melrose Training or to go full time. I thought, let me take the summer, let me
Mm.
just figure some stuff out, give myself a bit of a breather. But when I actually, made that leap, I realized I had the opportunity to really try and dive in full time, and it felt so right. I really didn't know what I was going to be doing, how I was going to make it work. I was starting from zero. I had no social media presence. The few clients that I had, I hadn't seen them in months because COVID had hit, gyms were closed. So it was really from the ground up. In terms of those early days, I started teaching classes to friends. That's where it started.
Mm.
I did a lot of free classes on Zoom. At that time, that it was all virtual, and from there it started to slowly expand. My friends would bring their sisters, and then their
Mm.
sisters would bring their friends. So it really started to grow from my own local community, and then from there, with building on social and just through word of mouth, I started to get what I refer to as real clients back then, people that weren't my friends and they were connected
Yeah.
to my friends. So that was the early days. Things looked so different in that it was all exclusively virtual, and it was so early. In terms of the business side of things, initially, I did work with a business coach early on who helped me to implement some structure into the offers that I put forward. At that time,
Cool.
especially when everyone was at home, everyone was working out from home. Working out was there were less competing priorities when the world was shut down. The model of a virtual group program worked really well. So I ran those for a few years. They built over time.
Mm.
It was virtual strength training program for women. And then, simultaneous to that, we grew on social, really built a community there as well. I would say that, that early experience was really helpful to get things organized on the back end and to be really strategic with the offers so that I didn't feel like I was like constantly, um, chasing for all of these different opportunities, trying to fill a million different class spots with a million different people that like didn't
Yeah.
exist and just weren't in my community. So that was early on. I mean, over time, there have been so many
Yeah.
iterations of Melrose Training, to come to the place of what I do now, which is primarily more of that social and content creation, but I also do maintain that training side of things with both virtual and in person. Of course, there's so many things that go on behind the scenes in terms of the process of structuring programs, onboarding clients, website, social, email marketing, all of those moving pieces that have built out over time. And I couldn't have really imagined in those early days, not having any prior business experience. I remember thinking very early on, okay, I thought when I got certified as a personal trainer, I'd be training with clients all day long, and somehow I'm coding my website. Like, how did I get here? But all of those things go, on behind the scenes. You know how it is. Over time,
Yeah.
within that first couple of years, I really did make a priority to invest back into the business and to
Mm.
outsource different aspects of things in terms of tech support, marketing, social, those sorts of things, because it allows me, of course, to really focus on my strengths, what I do best, and
Yeah.
to bring in people to do those things best. So that has worked really well for me in my business. One thing as well that made such a difference, and I didn't even realize it at the time, is organic Google SEO through Google reviews. Twofold, because
Mm,
having really strong Google reviews really boosts your SEO. I didn't know this. I thought, okay, businesses get Google reviews. Yes, I'll do that too. But it really became such a strong
yeah,
driver in the growth of Melrose Training, because majority of my clients would either find me through referrals or through cold Google searches. But also having those
right.
testimonials from real people really builds trust, even with being a smaller brand, and helps people, really feel
Yeah.
confident making that decision to reach out initially or to, say yes to working with you. So I really can't recommend that enough for anyone listening, specifically in the industry of fitness, which, is so oversaturated, to really prioritize the feedback that you receive from your clients, but also really highlighting that and showcasing that through reviews has been monumental and a huge catalyst for growth for Melrose Training.
So when you decided to take things like from exclusively virtual to in-person training, was that like, okay, now I have to find a studio space that I can rent out, that I can like actually show up and train with my clients at the same time? Like, is that where you're placing more of a priority now? Or are you still finding that virtual training is like in high demand? And like, where do you think where does it go from here?
Yeah, so in 2022, I could feel the virtual side sort of slipping through my fingertips, and what I had done for the previous 2 years felt like it wasn't really resonating with people anymore, especially when the world started to open back up. There was almost like pushback on Zoom. I think people really were craving that in-person experience. And after being on, Zoom for 2+ years, really wanted off of it. So that is when I started to pivot more into the in-person training side of things, both one-on-one training across Toronto, and then also group community events, which are so incredibly fun and so special. There was a few
Mm,
iterations of that. Firstly being, initially building up my clientele base with in-person clients. I said yes to everyone that was in Toronto because I had to, and that I was willing to
right.
kind of go wherever downtown, and it was still very early days. Um, Once I
Of
built up more
course.
of a client base, that really stopped making sense, because kind of going here and then going there, most people want to train in the morning or the evening. And if there's commute time factored in, you might only be able to see one or two clients. And it's just not a good way to sort of be able to show up in your business. It's very much limited. So over time, I centralized to one specific neighborhood in Toronto, and was still doing a mix of condo gym training as well as um, uh, studio training at a studio that's almost like a WeWork model. So I was able to,
Okay,
go
cool.
there with my clients and not actually have any of that like overhead back end, just sort of pop up and use a private gym space, which is
Right.
fantastic. For me, it really was never, in my on my vision board to open a physical studio space. I love a pop-up workout. I do them all across Toronto, cool locations, storefronts, partnerships with brands, but I've never been striving to have my own gym space. So I really appreciate the flexible model where you can show up with your clients. And I think these, are really quite common across North America and, a lot of major cities. Over time,
Yeah.
I centralized all of my in-person clients to that one location. As you build up more of a client base, you have that capability to, be more discerning with who you work with and where you work with, because ultimately, as a trainer, it makes the most sense to be in one place for your physical clients so that you can see people back to back and be
Yeah.
able to work with the most number of people possible, make the best use of your time, be able to offer as many slots as possible. So over time, that sort of geographical location narrowed in. In terms of going forward, so I'm so grateful that we've really been at capacity for our one-on-one training for really most of this year. So um, that work that I
Wow.
do is so special, and I really love training with clients. You work so closely with someone as a trainer, and that relationship, I mean, a really strong working relationship is so important. You see each other more than you see like pretty much anyone else in your life, right? You might be seeing your trainer 2 or 3 times a week. It's a
Yeah.
lot of time together. I might see like one of my friends like once every couple weeks. So it
Yeah.
really is something that I'm so grateful for, and it's so meaningful. And that is a portion of my business that I really do enjoy. Um, the online sort of community side of things, community Toronto events, also really that main focus of Melrose going forward. Um, but the one-on-one is very, very, very special to me, and something I would always like to maintain in some sort of way.
Yeah. I mean, I had a, so the way that I got into strength training was like I had a trainer when I lived in China during the pandemic. It was like 2 years basically of no vacations. We were still working, and like there was just no excuses to not work out. And I think being forced into that level of consistency is what eventually led me to the love of it and creating it into like more of a lifestyle rather than just something I had to do at the end of the day. And I had a trainer teaching me strength training for that time because it was not something that I had really gotten into. Like I was doing CrossFit before that, or something other in that capacity. But CrossFit is super not sustainable. So my trainer and I grew super close. I was working out 5 days a week for a hot minute, and like we grew so close. And to this day, she and I are still really, really good friends. Because you spend so much time with that person, and like they're also seeing you at vulnerable moments where like I have shit going on in
Mm-hmm.
my life that is impacting my workout, that is making me feel like I'm getting frustrated because I can't lift what I want to be able to lift. And like we talk about life, and it's just such a cool experience to be able to work out with that person, because it's like because of the nature of the exercising, like it's compounding the emotional aspect, and it's like bonding you guys, and it's such like a fun, cool experience to have, I think.
I totally hear you on that, because it is, a vulnerable position to be in the gym. And oftentimes people are stepping outside of their comfort zone and maybe taking, a leap of faith on themselves or trying something new. And for anyone listening, if you've had an experience, before, where maybe you've been to a fitness class or worked with someone, and it didn't light you up, it didn't feel, like it was that right fit, just know that there's so many different modalities of training, different approaches, and really finding that, workout class, that style of movement, that trainer that feels like a strong fit for you is
Yeah.
so important. And if you haven't found that yet, don't be discouraged. Don't think that that means that exercise isn't for you. It's out there. There's just so many different ways of doing things. And when you really get into a strong routine and you find what you like, I don't know about you, but for example, I'm so picky personally in workout classes, because I like a certain vibe, and I like a certain narrative. I respect, all different styles of training, but it really is so cool when you feel that, you really found your workout style, your trainer, your class, your gym. It all just clicks.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely had that experience. Like, it's definitely started with strength training. Recently, I started really getting into Pilates, but through the reformer, and it was specifically this one studio here in SF called Body Rock, because it combines like the principles of strength training. So, like, I'm doing the same exercises that I do in the gym, just on the reformer, but like, it's dark, the lights are down, we play vibey music, and like, I think also, I mean, low-key, I don't recommend Pilates for everyone, because if you do not know what your form is, like you will not succeed with Pilates. And I think that like people like to think it's this easy workout because like they're not really having to move. And I'm like, I think that's just because you don't understand the form behind it and like what's required to actually make the exercises work for you. So I love Pilates because I have a foundation in strength training. And like those two things combined are a beautiful combo that I am absolutely obsessed with. Um, and honestly, like it's so funny to hear you say like how you got into being a trainer, because when I started doing Pilates, I was like, should I become a Pilates instructor?
Yeah, you want to
I've
share
become
that with other
obsessed.
people.
Exactly,
Totally.
exactly. That was exactly how I felt. And also like I don't know if you experience this, but like I go to a workout class, particularly like if I do Pilates, I'm thinking like what I would do in the position of the trainer. Like I would be like, oh, I would insert like motivational talk here, or like, I see a girl in front of me whose form is not so hot, and I'd be like, oh my God, I would run over to her and like help correct her, but maybe that's just me.
You might be onto something here. Hey, you never know.
Yeah,
And that authentic experience of I fell in love with the style of movement in a way that I, couldn't have even imagined is really
yeah.
powerful and really speaks to people. So you might be onto something.
Who knows? I don't know, but maybe we'll see. Anyway, I think that's probably like the perfect place to close. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experiences. It has been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Maddie, and thank you to everyone listening.